Day. Sa lahat po, sa mga kasamahan natin sa media at sa mga libo-libong sumusubaybay sa live streaming sa Deped Philippines. May we also acknowledge our resource persons, Yusek Ann Sevilla, our Undersecretary for Finance, Yusek Nepo Malaluan, Chief of Staff, and our Secretary of the Department of Education, Secretary Leonor Magdolis Briones. May we begin with the opening statement of the Honorable Secretary on the IATF decision and on the new school calendar. Ma'am?
Good morning, members of the press, media, supporters, advocates of continuation of the learning process among our children, whatever is happening with the rest of the country and the rest of the world. We would like to share perhaps the most important news of all. It happened during the end of the week, and this is the resolution last Saturday of the IATF, which approved the submission of our learning continuity plan, and also approved the opening of classes for basic education on August 24, 2020, and ending on April 30, 2021. This is for academic school year ending 2021. As for private schools, this is a frequently asked question. As for private schools, they will be allowed because they have declared readiness, some of them, within the period provided by law. Law provides that schools will open first Monday of June and last Monday of August. However, they should submit their school learning continuity plan, which we want to be sure is also within the framework of our overall national learning continuity plan. And also it must be emphasized, because parents are very anxious, no face-to-face classes will be allowed earlier than August 24, 2030. And from August 24, face-to-face learning shall only be allowed within the local risk severity grading permits, which will be issued by the IATF, and also subject to compliance with minimum health standards. So ulitin ko, final na ito. Hindi naman talaga final, because the events will influence the final opening of classes, pero we have to plan. Parents are asking questions. The community is asking questions because they want to have an idea of what is going to happen to learners and schools for the rest of the year. So ang opening ng classes is August 24. The ending will be on April 30. And then we have worked out the details of the school calendar. Private schools and maybe even public schools will be allowed to open within the period provided by law, because we have an existing law which states that first week of June up to last day of August will be will allow the opening of schools, formal opening of schools. Also, we have emphasized that when we say schools will formally open on August 24, it does not mean that all of these activities will be face-to-face. I want to repeat this again and again and again, because parents and public have always said that they will never allow their children to go to school, even if there is already opening of classes, because of the fears of the dangers of COVID. But we are saying that when we say schools will formally open, it does not necessarily mean what we say humorously as face-to-face. Hindi. Depending on how the different areas are classified by IATF, and also depending on the compliance of minimum health standards of the Department of Health. So ganon ang ating ruling. Now, As to the various learning delivery options, a lot of questions have been raised. I believe and I noticed that there is not much awareness of the degree to which Deped has already progressed in the offering of alternative delivery options. Even before COVID, Deped schools, some of those who are capable and also supported by local governments as well as partners in education, have already been engaged in alternative delivery modes other than face to face. So it can be face to face, it can also be virtual, it can also be distance learning. And this would be what we describe as blended learning, a mix of face to face as well as other delivery options, distance learnings, and homeschooling. By distance learning, we mean all the other traditional ways by which learning has been delivered outside of face to face. For example, we have noticed a frequent observation is that not everyone, not all places in the country have access to ICT or to platforms. Well, we also notice that there are more cell phones than humans in the Philippines, 173 million as of the latest count, in a country of 100 million people. So cell phones can be a medium of transmission. And then we also have television. Many of us right now in the Philippines have access to television. And finally, if there are places where there is no television, we have the classic way of transmitting knowledge and news, which is radio. And these radio programs have been around since the time of your grandparents, those of you in the press conference. When MacArthur said he will return, he did not text. He said it over radio. When finally World War II was decisively finished, the byword at the time was the Eagles have landed. Hindi naman yun tinext, hindi naman yun tinivi, radio naman. And many institutions, whether formal universities, colleges, and civil society groups, religious organizations, have always resorted to radio as a way by which knowledge is transmitted. For example, a good friend of mine, Father Francis Lucas, works with farmers, and lessons are transmitted on up-to-date farming via radio. This happens all the time, all over the country. And these are very effective ways of reaching people who don't have access to platforms, who don't have access to TV, who don't have cell phones, but they have radios. So it's not just learning platforms. By learning platforms, I would like to share also that Deped has developed what is now known as the Deped Commons. It is a platform for the transmission of learning. Nandoon yung mga lessons, nandoon yung mga learning resources, mga exams, mga teaching, new ways of teachings, etc. As of the latest tally, more than 6 million users now have access to Deped Commons. And so that's how popular, and it's still getting more and more popular, especially when we ask the teachers to report on June 1. Also, we regret to say that the activities of Deped, which always involved national participation and are guaranteed crowd drawers, will be canceled in the meantime. These are science fairs. I feel quite sad about this because what children have come up with in senior high school, solutions to problems where they which they develop through research and so on, will not be continued. Showcase of portfolios for those who are in the arts and arts, whether dancing or singing or music. Trade fairs where children also display their products, and school sports. Sports draw thousands and thousands of people from all over the country. The last Palarong Pambansa brought in more than 30,000 people to Davao alone. And this year's Palaro, which is scheduled for to be held in Marikina, will have to be cancelled in the meantime. Those of you who have fond memories of participating, for example, in campus journalism contests, will have to forego that this year. And unless, and I talked with one reporter yesterday, and he was discussing the possibility of having these journalism contests via platforms again. The Festival of Talents, which I consider very exciting and very inspiring, where you have dances, singing, and street activities. Job fairs, which are also very popular with senior high school kids. And all of these are cancelled except those which are conducted online or by TV or by radio or by cell phone. Also, some good news, some more good news. Secretary Martin Andanar of PCOO has offered the use of the government's television and radio stations. They are expanding the scope and the reach of television and radio stations to implement the programs, the learning continuity program, especially for distance learning, where television and radio is the main way of transmitting learning. Many of you have been very anxious, because who should not be anxious? Who should not be afraid of COVID? But I would like to assure everyone, as I have presented to IATF, that we will observe all the guidelines. We will not allow schools to be open without the minimum, without compliance with the minimum standards of the Department of Health, without the classification that will allow them to open schools from IATF, and all the other precautions. And at this point, perhaps there will be greater appreciation for our reluctance for the use of the schools as parking areas, as for those who are suspect for PUIs and PUMs. And we are discouraging this unless there is an undertaking from the local government that all the precautions will be utilized, and also kailangan may assurance that after the use of our facilities will be thoroughly clean. So ayun, we are now informing local governments in advance that we are opening on August 24. So we are slowing down on requests for the use of our classrooms, and it is actually happening. So we are implementing a safe back to schools program. We will not allow our children to go back to schools unless conditions are favorable. Now, distance learning will also be a major component of learning delivery, as earlier pointed out. Now, so we are working double time. If we work 10 hours, 12 hours a day in the EXICOM, in MANCOM, our management committee, involving all the regions and the superintendents, and also in the national committees, particularly the IATF. If we used to work 12 hours a day, we are now working 24 hours a day because we cannot afford to be wasting the time of our children, of our teachers, and of our countrymen. Now, what are the highlights of our school calendar for school year 2020-2021? I've already said opening will be August 24. It can be virtual or it can be face-to-face depending on compliance with standards. School year will end on April 30, 2021, and I am exercising the prerogative, if necessary, to authorize the conduct of distance learning activities on Saturdays. But if there are religious considerations, then we can consider Sundays as well. So in total, according to law, our school calendar should be composed of 203 school days, but not all of these will be spent in school. A significant number will be spent at home where students can do their homework, can do their studies, and teachers can also upskill themselves. I've already said physical opening of schools will depend on risk severity grading and the guidelines of the Department of Health. So, pag sabihing August 24, it does not mean na physically opening sa lahat. And all of these will be authorized by the regional and the division offices. Division offices will recommend to the director, to the regional director, and regional director will finally approve. We have been talking with the private schools. They have indicated some organizations of private schools have indicated their interest in opening school in June. Again, we will allow them upon their presentation of their learning continuity programs, and also, if necessary, a showing of the facilities that they have for online delivery. Kasi yung mga June, kailangan wala talaga yung face-to-face at this particular time. No? So basta within the first Monday of June, but not later than the last day of August, pero may mga provided. Now, as for the teachers shall be rendering service starting June 1. You will recall that by April and May, they have had their 2 months summer vacation. And so they have to be on record already as reporting for work. Otherwise, we'll have horrendous administrative nightmare kung hindi sila mag-report for duty. But they will not necessarily be teaching kasi August 24 pa ang opening ng classes. They will be attending orientation, training activities, which shall be organized by the regional directors, by the superintendents and principals. Distance learning delivery modalities. They will be preparing instructional materials, and they can also indicate when they report for work, they will not have to physically make an appearance. They will communicate with the principals, superintendents, and with the regional directors that they are already reporting for work. Now, if skeleton workforce is still operative in government, then we will issue the appropriate alternative work arrangement guidelines. But officially, they will be reporting on June. Otherwise, as I said, we will not have any basis for already giving to them their salaries as well as their benefits. Now, as to Brigada Escuela, which is always a fun day, and I have enjoyed these activities very much on regional, provincial, as well as national scale. It will be scheduled in September 2020, but there will be separate guidelines. We will not do it the way it used to be done before because there's so much face-to-face and activities, and social distancing is not practiced. Also, we'd like to encourage our very faithful supporters, contributors, donors, etc., to focus their gifts, to focus their contributions, um, perhaps from the usual backpack with paper, with pencil, and with notebook, to perhaps gadgets if they can afford it, to perhaps other small things which will facilitate the practice of the various learning modalities that we are putting in place. At saka yung cleaning materials, for example, yung mga walis, and so on, perhaps we can also consider other cleaning materials which will ensure that the schools be ready, will be COVID free, especially those which have been used by local governments as parking stations for the PUMs and the PUIs. So there will be separate guidelines. This also goes to Oplan Talusugan. And then also the other efforts for community activities, we will always consult the schools, the learners, the administrators, and our teaching and non-teaching personnel. Right now, we used to have once a month meetings for executive committee and management committee. Now we have them every week because technology makes it more convenient and faster to conduct meetings on daily, sometimes every other day. It's very easy to call now the members of our decision-making family and the Deped because of the use of technology, of course, but it also means more work. Nonetheless, all our efforts depend very heavily on family and community support. One specific feature of our school year at this time is that we will be depending very heavily on the community, on the families, and on the parents, the lolos, the yayas, the tutors, to assist the learners, because some of the work will have to be done at home. Some of the lessons will be transmitted through different platforms, and some of these activities will be done at home. So education now becomes more and more a shared activity, and we ask the parents, we ask the community, we ask our donors, our experts to join with us in this effort. This is now the new world of learning. This is the new method of transmitting knowledge. As I said earlier, before COVID, we already formed a futures group because we could see the trends in education. COVID has accelerated all these efforts, and more we need the support of the families, we need the support of the communities, we need the support of all who advocate education, particularly media, in communicating the correct information, the correct guidelines to the public. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, ma'am. At this point, I would like to acknowledge Undersecretary Nepomuceno Malaluan for his opening statement.
The highlights, as stated by the secretary, I think provides the clear discussion of the direction of the department at this time, and so we will be ready to assist the secretary in responding to questions later. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, sir. May we also acknowledge the presence of Undersecretary Annalyn Sevilla. Ma'am, for your opening statement po.
Magandang umaga po. Good morning, Secretary Yusek Nepo, and to all the Deped family. Just to remind everyone and the Secretary, ma'am, we are live stream in Facebook, and we are receiving a lot of thumbs up and heart remarks when you presented. So we are ready to support the Secretary. Good morning po.